You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for InBetweenDrafts.com. I'm John Negroni.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today we're doing a manga recap of One Piece chapter 1140, titled Scopper, Gaban. And Travis, some would say that you're the skipper to my John.
Skipper sounds a little young, doesn't it? I mean, I appreciate the compliment that way.
Skipper's like the leader of... No, that means you're the leader of the boat.
Does it, though? It kind of, like, there's something about it that just makes it seem like it feels cabin boyish, or like a nickname you give your cabin boy. I don't know.
Fine. You can be Gilligan, then, instead.
There you go. Is
that what it is? Scopper Gaban is supposed to be Skipper Gilligan? Is that what we're doing?
No, the translation on his name is wild, man. It's nuts.
Just saying. As usual, we're going to be discussing spoilers for the One Piece manga up until this point. So if you've not yet read One Piece 1140, be sure to do so now for free on the Viz website or the Shonen Jump app, linked in the show notes as always. And remember, all new One Piece chapters are available to read for free, up to 3 weeks after their official release. But you can read them whenever you want if you're subscribed to Shonen Jump, which we are and do recommend. Now, Travis, before we get into the chapter proper, I do want to tell you a secret. A little secret.
I like secrets.
Well, I don't always tell you secrets. Usually I'm straightforward, forthcoming, blunt, and I don't play games.
But we all know I can't be trusted anyway.
Right. And we all know, yes, that I always tell the truth. But in this case, I gotta tell you the truth for once, and that is, I found a new website. Okay?
But there's only 3 websites. How did you find a new one?
It's true. Well, I was browsing StumbleUpon, which definitely still exists. And, it's like it read my mind and overheard what I was saying out loud. I sure wish there was a website where I could talk to other people about One Piece, since social media is the worst thing ever invented, maybe since StumbleUpon. And wouldn't you know it, Travis, I stumbled upon a new website. That's my secret.
Oh, what website is this, John?
Okay, well, get your notepad out because you may want to spell it out, right? It's called MySpace.
Is that 2 words? Is there like a dash?
No, it's just one word. And And you know what website it kind of reminds me of?
Yeah,
Discord.
What's that?
It's Discord. It reminds me of Discord. Yeah, it's scrappy, efficient, does what you want. The only problem is that I haven't been able to find any One Piece fans on MySpace, so I give up.
Yeah, well, the good news is, as you've noted, there is a Discord linked in the show notes where you can find those One Piece fans, and fans of all kinds of things as well. We should remind folks every once in a while that you have a whole other podcast that can also be discussed in that Discord.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun on our most recent episode. We helped an aspiring author brainstorm some ideas for fantasy challenges that don't involve combat. And it was really nice. And in the YouTube comments, the original poster of the prompt commented. We had a grand old time. And one of our videos actually took off. We got like a lot of views on it, way more than usual. So if you're curious about that, it's called Fantasy Writing for Barbarians. And I do mention One Piece all the time on that podcast because, One Piece is a big fantasy story. Of course it's going to get brought up, Travis. Come on.
Of course. It's definitely not just because it's a huge inspiration for your work specifically.
That's true. The most true thing I think you've ever said, actually. Let's talk about this chapter, Travis. And we forgot to say the email. We have to make it up to the listeners.
We're gonna get it punished. All right, let me crack my knuckles here. I'll say it twice. Just make sure you've got those notepads out, listeners. If you don't want to join the Discord and you want to still chat with us, run your theories by us, tell us how bad ours are, you can get a hold of us at rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. And I will say one more time, I promised.
We'll gotta do it again. Don't forget.
We'll gotta do it again. rookiepirateradio@gmail.com.
Don't forget to tell your parents about rookiepirateradio@gmail.com. I wanted to say it too. And yes, and then you know what? Use the email however you like, especially if you want to write us a song. We love those. All right, Travis, let's talk about this chapter finally. Again, it's called Scopper Gaban. Can you walk us through this cover story? We're still in, Ogre Child Yamato's Golden Harvest Surrogate Pilgrimage. What's going on here?
Yeah, we're on volume 26. So honestly, we're making a lot of ground now. We've gone from doing very
Mm-hmm.
little to a lot happening. This is, of course, Ulti being put up against a dartboard, and Who's Who is throwing what appears to be full-length swords at her, which is pretty wild. And it does include the quote, if anything happens to Pei Pei, I'll hunt you to the depths of hell and beat you to death. Pei Pei, of course, being Page One, who we assumed was the other silhouette in the previous cover story. It's all very straightforward. What's interesting is that at this point, it still seems like we are seeing all of this from Yamato's point of view, so they themselves do not appear in this cover
Mm-hmm.
story.
Yeah, they're kind of like peeking through the door. Still very
Hmm.
curious about what's going on here, why these former crew members, I guess they're still technically crew members of Kaido for all. I guess maybe they defected at this point, but why are they
Yeah.
attacking each other? What is this rift? I guess we're going to find out pretty soon, and it's probably
You
going to
know,
be interesting, I would assume.
yeah, and you know what's interesting is that they are all wearing like traditional Wano garb now. Who's Who was before, and now Ulti is as well. They didn't
Mhm.
before, despite
That's
being in
right.
the being in Wano for so long. They didn't adopt any of this until this stage. So I wonder what that's. Are they like incognito, or is there something else going on?
Well, that's the thing. Beforehand, they were they were Kaido crew members, so they had to wear the Kaido clothes, the Beast Pirates clothes, and now they're free. It seems like they have
Huh,
defected and they live
I
that they're
mean,
citizens.
maybe, but like, do you think Page One's hat was a part of like the dress code?
I
Just
don't know.
saying.
Yeah, that one's a little different. But hey, maybe we'll see page one in the next cover story. We'll get an idea of what he looks like then. But
Yeah.
let's get into the actual chapter, the main stuff, and I do agree. It is nice that the cover story is starting to get a little bit more interesting. It was definitely meandering for a bit there, but anyway,
Hmm.
okay. So brief summary, and then we'll get into it piece by piece. We piece by piece. We first start off with a pretty big duel between Luffy and Scopper Gaban. Just a reminder that Luffy and Zoro do not know that this really is Scopper Gaban, or that of course he's a former member of the Roger Pirates. Only the readers really are aware of that. But yeah, Gaban challenges Luffy for the key to Loki's chains. It ends up being this massive key that he uses as a weapon, which is fun. They have this kind of brief but pretty intense skirmish where it's clear, of course, that Gaban is extremely formidable. But just when Luffy goes into Gear 5th and Zoro joins the fight, earning Gaban's respect, for how he jumps in for Luffy, Gaban actually ends up surrendering and allows Luffy to just take the key. He actually tells them to come see him, before they leave. Again, they still don't know who he is. And they're like, I never want to see you again. It's very funny. But yeah, so we kind of finish it there with what's going on with them, I guess, for now. So we'll say goodbye to Scop or Gaban. See you, Scop. We'll see you later. Meanwhile, the narrative shifts over to the Sun World, and that's where we see Shamrock and Gunko, the two members of the Holy Knights, and they have arrived at the Sun World with a pretty sinister agenda. They actually want to capture the giant children at the Walrus School, but they need some help. So they end up summoning two fellow God's Knights, Summers and Killingham. Killingham, I think, was the one who was part of the Shepherd family. It was either Killingham. Yeah, was it?
Summers is the shepherd.
Summers was Shepherd.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm.
Little bit of a gag where one of them literally was summoned, without any clothes on. And we learn, not necessarily learn, something we suspected is confirmed, that when you get summoned through the circle, you have to have a mark that allows you to be summoned. So not just anybody can go through these summoning circles. So that is a limitation on them that I think we had an idea that was like, oh, there has to be something special about you. It can't just be anybody. But now that's been pretty set in stone there, set in sea stone rather. But yeah, so now we kind of end off with a cliffhanger where we have these really powerful opponents about to set off against kind of an undefended walrus school, which could put Saul and Robin, of course, in a lot of danger. Although one good thing is that Shamrock is leaving. So Shamrock has been summoned back to the Holy Land for unspecified reasons, kind of implied that they're trying to batten down the hatches for something big about to go down. And so we say goodbye to Shamrock for now. What was even the point of having him here besides nothing? I mean, okay, we know who he is now. We got his name. We know about his sword. He didn't encounter any, Straw Hat characters, didn't really do anything except hurt Loki, sort of. And then now we have these kind of Holy Knight fodder agents. And I don't love it personally. I think it's a little bit like, aren't we in the final saga? Isn't this the saga where we do stuff, Travis?
I mean, let's be clear. This is the saga where we've done a lot of stuff, but this is a little bit of a bummer for me too, because I was kind of hoping we'd get sort of like a cheat way for Luffy to reunite with Shanks and kind of go through the emotions on that. I feel like we still have that coming down the pipeline a little bit, in large part because Loki saw him. That, I think, is a critical factor here, because Loki not being a bad guy doesn't necessarily mean that he's automatically going to side with Luffy. This could be the kind of thing that creates conflict. Luffy pretty much believes wholeheartedly that the person that was seen at the castle is not Shanks, but he doesn't have proof of that yet, and it's still very possible that Shanks' good name is going to get sullied as a result of all of this. So we still have some conflict there, and it does at least give us that sprinkling of Shanks lore for the year that we get, as we're always owed, to tease us a little bit. And my wheels have been turning for many different reasons, thanks to his appearance, his little tease, and even his departure here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. That's fair. And I still have some lingering questions. If we can start from the kind of final stuff. Shamrock talks about making a game of it, and so what does
You
that
know that you
mean?
love.
Is
I
this
mean,
going to be?
they love their war crimes. Like,
Yeah, the Gods Valley kind of game things. Well, I saw there was
yeah.
some chatter on YouTube and stuff of like, oh, is this supposed to be like a mirror of God Valley, right? It's going to be a similar situation where Elbaf is going to become this massive destruction ground. But right now, there aren't a lot of key players, but could we essentially have like a bunch of other characters from around the One Piece world jumping into Elbaf? It would seem a little repetitive because we kind of already got that in Egghead, but I don't know, worth bringing up, I think.
Yeah. I think this is score points kind of situation more than it is what happened after the fact. The whole actual reason they were at God Valley was, number one, to steal resources because they're fascists, but the main thing that they portrayed it as was a competition. And so that's what we're about to see here. We're going to see how many giants can be trafficked across the sea by each of these different knights, and they're going to be points. And then they're going to find out that there are Straw Hats on this island, and they're going to complicate the rules of the game. I wouldn't compare it to Egghead. I'd compare it to Dressrosa. The midway point of Dressrosa, where Doflamingo gets on the big display and starts assigning points to everybody, and we kind of get this roundabout killing game situation going. I think we're headed in something like that direction with those lines. That's not the line that catches my attention, though. What do you think about the paying a visit to Harold's grave?
Mm. Yeah. So this, of course, sparked a lot of, I don't want to call it controversy, but definitely added some fodder to those of us, including you and me, who find Harold very sus, because it does seem like he had some, plot machinations with the world government, wanted to bring Elbaf to the world government. That summoning circle had to have been approved by somebody. And so it does seem pretty clear that Harold and these gods knights, like, they had some kind of kinship, or they had some kind of arrangement. Something's going on there. I'm not sure what else it could be, of like why they would want to go to his grave, unless they have some kind of Gecko Moria stuff going on here where are we going to get zombie Harold? I doubt it. But I
It's
do
so
wonder. Yeah.
casual. It's so casual. It's the kind of thing that you would say about someone you knew. And that's what's interesting to me. They say it so offhand as if they've done it before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's the thing
So
is
that's
like,
interesting.
so if that's the case, right, they have easy access to Elbaf. Why now? Why do any of this now? That's something that I think we've kind of touched on of being curious about, but
Hmm.
it is still really strange because what's the thing that really spurred this? Is it
I
just,
still
the
feel
sinking of the world? And yeah.
I feel Garling is still the factor here. Now that he has more power, he's making a move of his own. Like the fact that he's like his son at least feels the ability to take a lateral action like this, I think plays into that.
Is that his son? I'm just kidding. But yeah, so
His clone son, whatever you want to call it.
well, he's an old guy. Maybe he's his grandson. I'm just joking. But
Man.
yeah. Okay. So to that point, right? I think that it's been set up that the world is going to sink into the water and everything. Elbaf is one place that has been elusive, I guess, for the world government. Shanks has left the island. They must be aware of that and see it as an opportunity. But again, Shanks has left the island before. And yeah, I guess there are just still some open questions on what does Elbaf really mean to the world government? What's valuable about it to the world government? And,
Yeah, something's changed for sure.
that's what I'm thinking. And, what would make it important? One thought I had was that if, we talked about, we raised this before of like, what if it's the giant food? They need food because of the blockade and everything like that. And that could be one thing, I mean, it's simple, but it's very One Piece to make it all about food.
Yeah, and you know what's incredible about the food thing? They have the solution for this problem right here, right? Like, how funny is it that they have these like instant teleportation circles that has the ability to transport like their accessories and things with them? They can't bring other living beings, but like his chest comes with them. His couch comes with him. Just go get food. Like it's the equivalent of choosing to DoorDash when the food you're ordering is a block away. That's what we're talking about here. Just
Mhm.
go get the food. But they can't dirty their hands, because they're again fascists. So we have to be these lazy freaks about it and create our own problems. It's quite funny. Well done, Oda.
Yeah, yeah, and that does remind me actually of something that did kind of dawn on me too, which is this idea that the Holy Knights can have these outside recruits, right? Which we kind of knew, but it's becoming more and more of a thing of like,
Yeah.
it kind of started with York being like, I'm going to become a celestial dragon. And then they come to, and then it seems like Gunko was kind of, a, a celestial dragon, sort of adopted into it. But then we also have characters here like Loki who are being invited to be a celestial dragon. So that kind of makes you think like, okay, was, Harold, a celestial dragon? Is that what happened, in the past? And so that's why they kind of like know him and trust him and all of that. And that has to do with why Loki, who clearly is anti that. Although the only thing with that is, he doesn't mention his father at all, I don't think, when he's having his spat with the celestial dragon. So to make of that what you will.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that necessarily rules anything that you just set out, though, because he hasn't talked about him at all. Everything we know about that incident has been hearsay from other people. Loki doesn't say, I'm I commit regicide, I'm going to destroy the world. He just says, I'm going to destroy the world. That's why we kind of are skeptical of his bit. So it's interesting because he doesn't seem to see it as any kind of thing to brag about, even though it probably is his greatest accomplishment when you think about it from his perspective, at least as how he
Mm.
projects himself.
Let's go to Scopper Gaban again at the
Yeah,
very beginning of the chapter. I think that this is like a classic thing, right? Where, Gaban is clearly testing Luffy. And something that was kind of interesting to me about it, because the obvious thing is that he wants to see, right, if Luffy's ready for the next stage of the journey. This test clearly based on like the little clues of like, oh, he has a good crew. He tests like Luffy's determination and what he's willing to do. It's clear from the get go that it's not really about Scopper actually trying to win this fight or whether or not he can, but it does seem that Gabon kind of wants to just test him, kind of test the waters. It's a little simplistic, but it is different enough. Like, it's not how Rayleigh approached this situation. So there's a very clear difference between Gabon and Rayleigh that I'm liking because it's feeling like Gabon is his own person and he's not just like a Rayleigh clone. I don't mean like One Piece clone, but just kind of a mimic of not just Rayleigh, I guess, but Crocus too, who like they were a bit more passive in some ways, right? But Rayleigh took it a step further by being like, "Oh, I'm going to train you."
Yeah, and that makes sense, right? Because Rayleigh, as Roger's, you know, right hand man, was kind of the more practical one. He handled the ship boys we saw all the way back in East Blue flashbacks. He's significantly more pragmatic than anybody else we've seen, except again maybe Crocus, but Crocus was not nearly as with the crew as long. So there's that. But it makes sense, especially given Roger's personality, that Rayleigh would be the more down to earth guy, and Gaban feels more like a wild card, where he has
Yeah,
a sense of self preservation, but it's far more outweighed by his passions, which again, kind of that
Sanji of
alignment with Sanji is there. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, and I guess to be fair, Rayleigh did technically test Luffy as well, but it was just different. It wasn't, nearly the
yeah.
same. But he
Well, and
did
they
have
and
his
they hear
own
about
kind
him.
of.
Yeah, they
Mhm.
validate what they hear from Shanks, right? And Shanks knows these men, so he knows what they are going to find interesting about Luffy as well. So that's worth
Yeah.
keeping in mind. Like Shanks is kind of setting the ground for what they're looking for.
Kind of interesting too. We didn't really acknowledge this last time, but this idea that Gabon has been living on Elbaf and his former crew member Shanks, it's his territory, and I just kind of wonder, what's that dynamic like at this point, right? Like they used to be on the same crew. Now Gabon's not really a pirate anymore. He's retired, but he's kind of like watching Shanks, but they also kind of live together. I guess there's kind of an interesting dynamic there that I don't know if Oda's just gonna kind of gloss over that, but yeah, I guess that's part
Yeah.
of why some people I think were a little bit like, oh, well, it doesn't make sense for Scopper to be here because Shanks, this is his island, so Scopper should be
Didn't
somewhere else like Lodestar. But yeah,
didn't Shanks say something back when we did see him on Elbaf about this supposed to have been just like a pit stop to meet somebody? Am I
like when?
remembering
Like,
that right?
what do you mean?
Like back during Egghead and everything when he one shotted
Oh, like when he
Kid.
went to Elbaf. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about that, but that could
I
be
feel
like
like
a
that was
yeah, maybe once in a
intentional.
while they do that. Mm.
Yeah. I think that's, and then of course, because I mean you even see in the little mini flashback panel we get here, Gabon's got a big old bottle of booze, and you know how Shanks is, and next thing you know they're all half drunk on the beach, and some kid
Hmm.
walks up and you got to deal with him.
Going back to the new God's Knights, yeah. So we have Summers and Killingham, and yeah, we still have some open questions about how powerful these guys really are, and it does suggest that they see the giants as some kind of threat in some way. The fact that they are targeting the giant children shows that, like, yes, they're very ruthless, but also they can't just attack Elbaf head on. So I think that there is something interesting about that and their approach to trying to control Elbaf. It's a very simple kind of thing of like just, hostage situation,
Hmm.
but I feel like there's got to be a little bit more to it as well in order to control the entire island. And because these are giants, like they're warriors at heart. And I know we've already kind of set up this idea that they've become a little bit less warmongery in their old age, but we still have, some of these really like ready to go fighter types like Hejrudin's crew, which I hope they come into play pretty soon. We haven't got enough of them, in my opinion. But then also, yeah, Dory and Brogy and Oishi and all those guys, because I feel like they still have the juice. Like they're still kind of like Warland, Elbaf, let's go.
Yeah, it is interesting because something that should be, as we talk about Elbaf and where it's at, basically the only export that we know of that it has right now is children, ironically, or that it had.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind
So,
of a repeat of Punk Hazard in that way.
well, I'm thinking like Mother Carmel stuff.
Oh yeah, that too, yeah.
So there that might be a factor here, is that like the supply has dried up, and so they want to reestablish those channels. I'm not sure. We don't really know what happened to that operation after, Lin Lin's incident, but you would think that that was a big deal. And we know that there's at least another slave trade with what Doflamingo was doing, but I don't think these two things were related. So the choice to target the children may be kind of a double-edged sword thing. But, at the same time, if you're really worried about the power of your opponents here, right? Then it makes a lot of sense to be like, well, we've got your kid right here and they ain't nearly as tough as you. So what are you going to do about it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it makes a modicum of sense. God help them when Nami finds out, though. That's what I have to say about this plan.
In terms of Summers and Killingham themselves, I think their designs are really fun. I think clearly a Kirin is a space Kirin is the kind of creature, it's probably a mythical Zoan that Killingham has. And I'm very curious about that because that is a very important, Japanese mythological creature. I would assume that there's a lot going on with this character because that's, a lot of potential there for him to be quite a, obstacle in the road. There's this thing too, though, where like the Shepherd family has this guy Summers. And we've long talked about the Gorosei, hinting that they are hundreds of years old and all this stuff. Should we really should we rethink that? Because it's clear that they're old. It's been proven that their lifespan is flexible. There have been little hints that they were around hundreds of years ago. However, if there's a Shepherd family, is that really the case? Like, is Shepherd like, grand patriarch kind of thing? Or have we been overthinking this? And no, I mean, because Garling is now, part of the group and, maybe it does just kind of get passed down person to person this whole time.
I think, we know that there is a right of succession that exists for the Gorosei. We know that for a fact now. That being said, it seems to have been very shocking to the other members of the Gorosei. So that's something worth keeping in mind. If they've had to replace a member, it has not happened in a long, long time. So there is that. But that doesn't mean that, back when we were doing the Ivankov playing One Piece theorist right alongside of stuff in Egghead, talking about Emu having basically immortality, that was kind of a given. We have the groundwork to basically go, yeah, that makes sense. But we're talking about potentially performing the surgery 6+ times, or it's some sort of extension power. But that's we don't have enough framework for that. Or it's the yokai
it's something about the.
But we still,
it's something about
we still
Emu's
don't know
powers.
what that is. Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like I feel like it's entirely plausible that they haven't been the same men the whole time, but they have been the same men for as far back as we've been allowed to see. Because again, they were genuinely shocked at Garling's appearance, and so I think that does count for something. Whatever happened, they were not expecting that. So, it's debatable. The one thing that I will say is that being a Gorosei does not seem like something you can aspire to be. I don't think they open those roles up very often because there is a grand secret that comes along with this.
Right.
Maybe the God's Knights know about Emu. Maybe they do. But it's also possible that they don't. It's entirely feasible.
Like Garling knew, though.
He could know as a result of that promotion. That could be a new thing. We don't know that for sure.
But he was promoted before, like, the Gorosei knew about it. That's so it's like how
the Gorosei, the other four knew about it. That doesn't, like, Emu can do whatever he wants. Like, that's well established. Yeah. Well, I don't know. We don't want to preclude.
Well, that just tells
the Lily theories.
Yeah. That just tells me maybe that I could see there being like an upper tier of Holy Knights, like not quite Gorosei, that are aware. Like it's just
tricky because like we know Emu has like servants, so obviously they know he exists. But like the more people that know this stuff, the more likely it's to get out, and it must have gotten out at some point because there's strong implications that Doflamingo has known this information. But I mean, does Charlos know that there's somebody sitting on that throne? That feels like the biggest issue too. But again, I think
that there's a difference between a celestial dragon like that. There's a difference between a celestial dragon like that and a holy knight who has been around for, who's in old age and is very important. I don't know.
Well, so my argument for that is that Charlos is far less likely to try to take Emu's power than Figureland Garling. You know what I mean? So those are the people that you want to limit that information to, if you're smart, and we don't know if Emu's smart.
We don't know how smart they are, yeah. And there was, Garling was kind of like a judge in terms of, judging other celestial dragons. And so, he did have a pretty important position. That's, before he became the most important position that he can get. But anyway, there wasn't too much else I wanted to get into. I know there's a bunch of like nonsense around power scaling, Gaban, and all that stuff. Like none of that is even, I don't even think it's worth talking about because, like, come on. Like, clearly nobody was really trying. And, like, Luffy gets a little, annoyed and stuff and gets tossed around, but it's Luffy. Like, yeah, that's kind of his deal. So,
he thought he was fighting an old guy for a minute there. He wasn't, like, trying. He was like, oh, gimme. And then once he realizes that he's kind of the real deal, he turns white and gets going. And I actually love this panel of him and Zoro. It might be one of my new favorite panels because, for one, it's arranged exactly like that Roger and Rayleigh panel from the God Valley flashback we did get. The placement is exact, including Luffy's pose, which I love that because it is exactly the kind of thing that Gaban would want to see. So that's fun. I also love that he has integrated the helmet into his form. So his Gear 5th form has horns in this shot. That I love that. That's so dumb. Like the rest, like not the whole costume has been integrated in, but just enough to because the horns are cool. He left the horns on.
Right.
It's perfect.
That's when he's his most free.
Yeah. He's like, these are cool. Why would I take them off?
Remia commented, bro, they are going to kidnap kids. Is the Navy going to care? I have terrible news for you, Remia. No, the Navy is not going to care. The Navy is not going to care at all. They have not cared about a lot of things that they should have cared about. Let's get real for a second. Now, Kobe would care, but, our Marine Civil War hasn't happened quite yet. We'll see.
John, are you saying that that law enforcement exists to protect the rich and powerful and not vulnerable children? Is that what you're implying here?
Anyway, commenter Tart said, it could be just me, but when Luffy told Zoro to jump in the fight with Gaban and then shot up to Gear 5 off the back, to me that's very telling and a flex for Gaban. There's not a lot of times where we see Luffy telling Zoro to jump in a 1v1 unless they are really strong. I'm not saying Gaban is going to destroy them, but him and Rayleigh still probably will give the best of them a run for their money. I love Gaban, by the way, LOL. I always like the third strongest in manga. I don't know why. I'm hyped to see if Sanji will get stronger this arc. I think Sanji already got some pretty notable power-ups, and this isn't his arc. I think he's been pretty much on the back burner lately, which is fine. Although if there is an opportunity, I guess, for him to meet Gaban and have some comedic relief stuff. But anyway, yes, Gaban is very strong. Yes, no question. That I think this is one of those things where it's really about getting the key. And I don't think part of it too is that Luffy and Zoro also wanted to make this fast because they want to go back and eat and drink. At least that was my interpretation. It's less about like, oh, Luffy can't take him. Yeah. So there you go.
It makes sense to me.
Keyblader 007 wrote, the mark is probably the mark of the beast, since they use pentagrams and summon demon elders. Whole world government's heads are basically Satan and demons from hell. Crazy. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah. I mean, there's been plenty of like Christianity, religion coding stuff in One Piece, like the Bible thing, the idea of a Messiah, all that. So, I mean, that tracks.
Hey, yeah, I wanted to ask about this mark, actually. We do see Summers, not wearing a lot in his first shot here, but he does have a big, like, tattoo going down his arm, his left arm specifically. What do you think that's the mark? Or a part of it's the mark? I don't know,
because there is, like, a bit of a pentagram thing going on there, yeah. And to be fair, we haven't really seen, like, a lot of people's arms that have used the Gorosei. We haven't really seen, I don't think, because...
Yeah, they all wear long sleeves and stuff, and then they transform, and there's not really an indicator. But there must be some kind of physical indicator of it, you would think, right?
That would make sense. That makes sense. Now, the mark on Summer's arm in particular, it's not identical to the pentagram, to be clear. That's
Hmm.
more of like, it has like triangles and the star. This thing has like kind of triangles, but it's in a different shape and it has some flames and stuff. I want to see it. I want to see more of it. Looks rad. Maybe I'll get it for myself.
Yeah.
It's funny
Add
because
it to
I do
your
have a friend.
collection.
Well, I have a friend who has One Piece tattoos. He has the Law's Heart in a Room thing as a tattoo and stuff like that. And so I imagine when he reads this chapter, he's going to be like, I need more room in my arm. Kiri Vizcano wrote, yeah, and of course, Shamrock still gets pulled away from the island, maybe for the rest of the arc. Just when I wanted to see this man interact with Luffy, that would have been a gem to see Luffy all confused. I wanted to see how strong Shamrock is as the leader of the Holy Knights. Is he the leader? Was that confirmed?
He's the like captain commander. He's not the supreme commander though. That was assigned to
Yeah,
Garling.
yeah, yeah.
So it doesn't look like he's inherited Garling's title. It still looks like Garling gets to retain that power. But he's
I
very
guess
clearly the
so.
actual like executor. So I guess if you think about like, the admirals to the fleet admiral, I guess maybe is the way to think about that.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, it's like ceremonial title in some ways. But anyway,
Yeah.
they wrote, we know he's Yonko level, do we? Due to the fact that he's Shank's twin brother. I mean, that just being someone's twin, you know, I don't know about that. The real question is who is stronger? I would say Shanks is stronger for sure. I mean, I don't want to jump the gun on that, but I have to think that yes, 1v1, always bet on Shanks. Do you guys think Luffy can defeat Shanks or Shamrock? I'll say no, not yet. I wonder what does Scopper Gaban want with Luffy? At the end of the arc, maybe teach him something new like Rayleigh did when he trained him, or maybe exchange information about Roger and their journey. I think maybe tell him something or maybe like give them information, sure, but nothing crazy. I don't think training, I think we're past that at this point. In terms of, yeah, do you think Luffy can defeat Shanks or Shamrock? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know.
I
I don't know if he could defeat Shanks. I think he could defeat Shamrock. Yes.
I
Yes on
think it's
Shamrock.
I think it's one of those things where defeating a Shamrock type seems more plausible than 1v1ing a full on Gorosei. It's important to remember that yes, technically we can call Egghead a win for the good guys, but it's not like they were really defeated. He didn't knock anybody out. Saturn died to Emu firing him, not Luffy punching him real hard or anything like that. So we, for the sake of the power scaling argument, we do still have a ladder to climb, and someone like these Holy Knights or Shamrock would definitely be rungs on that ladder. And I would expect, at least narratively speaking, Shanks to be further up that as well.
I like to think that we're at the point where from here on out, it's going to be less about Luffy being stronger or getting stronger. I like to think that he is like, I think he's hit his peak and it's just a matter of him refining this power and getting better at it and
Mm-hmm.
using it longer. And really what's going to tip the
Mm-hmm.
balance in these fights is information and knowledge and understanding how, because he was able to hold his own against the Gorosei, right? The problem was he didn't know how to beat them. And Luffy having that awareness and understanding, like Naruto style, I guess, that's probably going to be what allows him to win these fights. It's going to be kind of like with Crocodile, right? Like it really came down to he had to understand Crocodile's weakness, not just
Yeah.
try to punch him hard.
And he's good at that contextual learning. So he's gonna
Yes.
remember how they got away. He's gonna remember Emmett. He's gonna remember what happened. So and we've heard it said multiple times, the thing that's gonna actually decide all of this is hockey, right? So as long as he continues to refine himself and build his will, every single hockey clash is supposed to make you stronger. So even this little skirmish against Scopper Gaban is technically progress. So yeah, I think you're right. I think we're not going to do another like full on training arc or anything, but just as like narrative progression. We don't want him going and like beating up another Gorosei or something next. It's going to be like these guys and then whoever else.
Mm-hmm. Remy 1008 wrote, "What is Who's Who up to? What's he plotting? What does he want? What's his game here? Who's who?" My thinking is that he's just kind of goofing around because he doesn't have anything else to do. He's been burned from two big factions already. He's a powerful guy. It's probably really tricky to leave Wano at the moment, so he has to lay low and maybe he just sees this opportunity to be this kind of, essentially what Shikamaru, whatever his name was, kind of do what he was up to, right? Like be kind of a bandit king and maybe like try to be the new bandit leader guy and make a
Yeah,
living.
be like Ashura Doji or something. I mean,
That's
this
who I was
really
saying.
does
Yeah,
feel
no, not
like yeah.
Shikamaru.
You
Ashura
had
Doji.
Naruto
Thank
on
you.
the brain from your other line. But
Yes.
but you're right because it really does feel like we're getting a setup to like put Yamato on the Odin path and building like a group of vassals or something kind of like seems like the way to do that. So it feels like
Good
that's where we're
villain.
going, even though, yeah, like the good old fashioned cover story villain redemption arc.
Yeah, yeah, I agree there. Pikeman wrote, given the Celestial Dragon's definition of games, this is going to get ugly. Scopper is going to be joining this fight. His own kid and wife are the first to get attacked. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Ripley is in the crosshairs right now. Colin is supposed to be there as well. Scopper isn't that far away. So, yeah, realistically, we could see Scopper getting involved. But there is something to him being like, oh, yeah, come see me later. Technically, that doesn't mean that Luffy is going to be around for this Holy Knights thing. It could be a quicker resolution than we're thinking. It could be one of those things that, like, the next thing we see is like, okay, Luffy, Zoro, and gang going over to Loki, and then the whole thing of whether or not they're going to free him. But then meanwhile, you could have this big event happening with the Celestial Dragons trying to steal the kids, and then the person who saves the day there is Scopper Gaban. Like, I could see that.
Yeah, I could see that. It's one of those things where it feels like Colin himself is being set up to do something. So I'm the 50-50 on whether or not we just have Gaban step in and do this. People have been making the jokes that like, oh, he's kind of by default the best father in One Piece, and it's like, I mean, we're getting a really good opportunity for him to join the ranks of the Fathers Who Do Nothing club.
Mm-hmm.
The option's still there.
Oh, new commenter, Gem Bug wrote, fun chapter. Glad to see some goofy knights, and one being an awakened mythical zone by the look of it. But I'm sure they're hardcore when actually on the job. Yeah, I think this is a good point that whenever you start to see villains being a little wacky and goofy, that means we are going to see some big stuff with them because Oda likes to use that kind of he likes to sympathize villains in that way before having them go full tilt. It's the same kind of thing where we see Kaido, jumping off of Skypiea. That's our introduction to the guy. And then we see, all the, the Queen stuff when all that was going down. I mean, don't get me started with Big Mom. So, yes, I was very heartened to see, yes, these are Holy Knights. They are coming into the story. They have personalities. I think they're going to be fun to read if this is a good indication.
Yeah, it makes me think of CP9 when they were first introduced and we were getting to know their personalities and their dynamic. That levity kind of disarms you so that when things get serious, you're kind of like, oh shoot, like it's fun.
All right, old favorite Snicker Snack wrote, I'm guessing Gaban holds the last clue to Laugh Tale or something along those lines, and that is the trust he talked about with Shanks. Tattoos on Summer's elbow could be the mark. Guess it runs in the family of Garlings to be fond of games involving lives. Good, yeah, there you go. Seeing Killingham in an awakened Zoan state, I'm assuming at least, makes me think back on how we didn't get to witness Kaido and Big Mom in awakened states, but that might have been on purpose in order for them to be beaten in Wano. Kind of like there's no hockey in Marineford War, so Whitebeard could lose. So on the first thing about Gaban, I don't think would help them that much. Maybe Lodestar, but I do think that they need something here to get them to the man with burn scars, the man marked by flames, because we still have something to figure out there. And clearly it's not Gaban, and that tracks and everything, but I think that would make more sense for the story because, okay, a clue to Laugh Tale. That could mean a lot of things. That could mean
Yeah.
finding the last road poneglyph, and that would make sense.
Yeah, it's some sort of point in the right direction situation. Obviously, we don't want spoilers. Luffy's anti-spoiler. But, they don't know who they need to seek. We have this information because other people were talking about it. Someone's got to put them, like, on the scent, right? So this is kind of like a Zoe situation where, okay, here's a teeny bit of info just to, like, put you on the right path.
I do think Kaido was awakened. The clouds.
The clouds throw everything off, man. Like, I've thought about this for so long because, like, Momonosuke was really bad at the clouds, right? That was like the
Hmm?
whole like final part of his arc, but he wasn't awakened. So, like, the clouds are a part of the power. Like,
Yeah,
I I think it's one of those things where, you know, we introduce the concept of awakening, but not, but like we don't want to necessarily like use it too often until we get Luffy to that point, I guess is what I'm thinking. I
I don't
don't know.
know. Because
I don't
Yamato
know.
awakened their devil fruit. Lucci did. Do we really? I know you and I have had this conversation before on the podcast, so I don't want
Yeah,
to relitigate it.
like
But
yeah, it's so like was Kaido awakened? I don't know. There's not enough evidence to say yes, but there's not enough evidence to say no.
yeah, and
It's
Big
just
Mom's a different story, right? Because that's a Paramecia awakening. So
yeah,
we don't know because it's never explicitly said.
yeah.
We can just surmise that yes, considering her power is so immense that it would just make sense.
It's
I mean,
one
the
of
stuff
those
with the
things.
homies, you know.
It's one of those things where I think I've settled it on they represent a previous generation, and by being basically the tippy top of power for so long, there's a certain level of complacency that comes from that,
Mm.
where the worst generation all basically learned to awaken their powers as a means to get over that experience gap that comes with like age and power, and that's why we just have to do it that way. But now that we're over that hill, everybody else is. This is why power scaling's dumb, man. Because now I'm going to be thinking
Yeah,
about this
yeah.
again.
Save it for the subreddit.
Yeah,
Cypher J wrote, I think the more important part of the demon transport system is not having to have the mark, but that they travel through the abyss. Oh yeah, we didn't mention this, so thank you, Cypher J.
yeah,
And they write, I think Blackbeard's dark powers access the abyss directly. Yes, I love this. In fact, I saw some folks mentioning this on Reddit, and I think it's really valid and would make so much sense. Other important facts are that the Revolutionary Army blockade on food for Mary Joa is working, and the Celestial Dragons are suffering as a result. This could affect the newly called up God's Knights who are sleeping when called. Luffy just left a feast, but when he exerts, he needs to eat. Have to presume the God's Knight energy reserves may be low in the upcoming fight as a result of the blockade. I don't agree with that just because I think that, I don't know, I feel like that would be a kind of a trite thing. I think they have food. It's just like the food that they have, the Celestial Dragons are complaining that it's not a lot, but I would think the Holy Knights have it. But yeah, whatever.
yeah. It's being rationed. The problem is not necessarily
Hmm.
that like their entire food supply is cut off. It's that it's being messed with so much that the excess that they're used to is not there.
Exactly. So they have enough, I think, to just be fine and be able to fight and do all that normal stuff. But
It's
and they
probably
also,
still almost
yeah,
certainly more than like most people have.
exactly. The other thing that Cypher J also wrote, the big question now is what is Loki going to do once he is released? I think he will want revenge on Gunko first. It is also obvious at this point that King Harold was taken out by the council who framed Loki for it taken out by the council who framed Loki for it, as Loki is likely a critical piece in the final battle. I think people are forgetting that while they may not be crew members, Lilith and Bonnie are also there on Elbaf and will certainly be helping in the coming battle. Will they? I feel like that they've been kind of off screen to go
Well,
do stuff in the
so
background, go get their permits,
yeah,
and we don't see them again.
yeah. It's a Kinemon situation, right? But Bonnie is a child. I mean, she's
Yeah.
technically a celestial dragon, so they shouldn't really kidnap a celestial dragon. But they might not know that. They might not know that.
Well, and she's
So
not at the Walrus School, so they went over to
they're at
the
the
Sun World
library.
area.
Yeah, they went to the
Yeah, well,
library.
I thought that they left to go get their permits.
Yeah, they did, but like I don't think they're gonna just stay. They're not gonna just go kidnap the kids at the school and then that's all that they're gonna do. Like they're gonna
Sure.
leave the school area. So I mean, if something is gonna put Bonnie under threat, I think that puts Lilith and Kuma back into the story, if only to protect her.
I kind of wonder if the key to getting Loki under control is going to be Nami. If Nami, because Nami is our connection to Lola, and we still need to see the softy, the guy who fell
Yeah.
for Lola, and I want to see that guy and kind of get that whole thing and like maybe have a reunion between the two characters at
Yeah,
some point. Um,
let's not forget that he has a friend, right? He has a pen pal that he writes to from prison over Dendenmushi.
hmm, there
We
you
still
go.
don't know what Shaggy's deal is.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe they make a deal like we'll help you get married, and Sanji will be the officiant or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Black Knight Halberd 42 wrote, and I didn't know if you want to say anything about the Abyss thing because
I
whoa.
I do want to since you bring up Blackbeard specifically, do you think Katarina Devon can use it now?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was something I saw brought up. Yeah, that would be interesting. That'd be interesting because yeah, if they have the mark, but is it like a
If it's a
bootleg
physical
mark?
mark.
That's the thing. How
Yeah,
does it
that's the
work?
question.
That would
That
be
is the
amazing though,
question.
because that would give Blackbeard. I mean, I want to see Blackbeard kind of ascend at this point in the story. It needs to happen. So that would be one quick way to do that.
Yeah, we do have to kind of we have to start to your point earlier. We do have to start converging some of these threads so that we can get them taken care of.
Yeah. Black Knight Halberd 42 wrote, I can smell the sweat off the power scalers trying to bend the Scopper fight into something it isn't. It's good to see Zoro and Luffy working together, specifically after so long. If Luffy had eaten that attack, especially in base, it could have seriously messed him up, considering he's still weak to cutting attacks. I don't doubt Scopper could give them both a real challenge once they all got serious, but he was clearly just looking if Luffy had the same loyalty and trust from his crew that Scopper himself did for Roger. Much more character shown here than in a basic fight. Can't stand when people treat manga like fantasy football. Thank you. I'm honestly shocked I haven't been bombarded with ads for some app that let you bet on weekly manga fights yet, just so we can finally ruin any intrinsic fun in this medium once and
Oh no! Do not start putting these on Poly Market. Oh no! Don't
yeah, like, we
manifest this.
can't
Cut this
manifest
part out.
this.
Cut this part out.
Black Knight wrote, Luffy's helmet getting absorbed into his hair and making the horns a part of his body is such a cool detail / new aspect of Gear 5th. Since well, I guess it's not technically new. We've seen the same kind of thing happen before, but it's just more obvious here. But anyway, they wrote, since Nika is sort of a folk hero figure, it's a cool way to make different versions of him valid by the action figures. Since the clothes of whatever culture the user is wearing literally becomes part of him. It makes me wish we got Gear 5 sooner so we could see what he'd look like in other arcs. To be honest, the new Holy Knights being introduced in a silly fashion makes me more scared of them than I am of Gunko. Exactly. She's too silly hiding beneath serious, but these guys feel more serious hiding beneath silly. I'm mad we're not getting Luffy meeting Shamrock yet, and initiating their own game like God Valley makes me think Kuma's going to have something to do here, but it might be too soon for him to return, even if we want that so bad. Well said.
Yeah. I got nothing for that one. That's basically taking the
Perfect
words out of my own
comment.
mouth.
No notes.
Yeah.
Hero to Anime wrote, wow, did Scopper set up a potential flashback arc of the Rogers crew heading to Laugh Tale? Or maybe of what happened afterward in more detail. I mean, we're in the final saga, so we should have a better inkling of what they saw besides Odin's flashback. Although there hasn't been any mention of the final red poneglyph either, and people were wondering if it's on Elbaf. And we got 3 Holy Knights to fight off since it's still the beginning part of the arc. Gunko is obviously going to knock Sanji off his feet badly, and then in the final part, she'll get beaten by Robin and or Nami. Usopp for sure will be the one to beat that Zoan Holy Knight. Well, hold on, because Usopp...
Right. That's a lot to take apart here.
Nami's with the gang. Sorry, what?
Mm-hmm. That's a lot to take apart. We got to take this in pieces.
Yeah. I think that's the whole thing with the Holy Knights. I think a lot of that is going to be not a Straw Hat thing at first. And I think that, the Giants are going to get involved for sure. I think that, don't forget, we have Hajruden's crew. Although I would assume that because Hajruden is so connected to Loki, that Hajruden's probably going to be in that part of the stuff in the underworld, especially because Road is probably going to be over there too. So I would imagine that some of the other giants we've met are going to be involved in this other scuffle. But in terms of flashbacks, the red poneglyph thing, we know it's with the man marked by flames. So, and we know the man marked by flames is has the whirlpools and has a ship. No indication that this thing is on Elbaf. I don't think that is I don't see a lot of evidence for that, unless I'm missing something.
No, I agree with you. I have a hot take about this comment. I don't think we need to see any more about the Roger Pirates going to Laugh Tale. I think the Odin flashback, it does a perfect job. I think that the anime takes it and elevates it into making it one of the best parts of the series. what more do you need? Because we're going to see it. We're going to see what they see. We don't need to know, we don't need to see it broken down into the details. We can infer things from that information once we get it real time. I don't think we need to, there are flashbacks that I think are mandatory. I don't think that's one of them.
Yeah, I think a mandatory flashback is going to be the Loki stuff. The stuff that happened with Loki
Sure.
and Harold and Joe Rule, like all that. I think we're going to get a flashback of that. I don't know if it'll be super lengthy, but I think it's going to
It will
turn us
be
into Loki
sad.
fans.
Yeah, it'll be
It's going to be
sad.
sad. But it's going to make us love. It's going to make us love Loki. That's my guess.
Yeah.
So there you go. One last
I think
comment
a lot
here
of
from
people are.
Kenshin Goku. Okay.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of people are even preemptively loving Loki as a result of that expectation. It feels so
Yeah.
obvious.
Honestly. Last comment here from Kenshin Goku. And they wrote, I meant to bring this up when Shamrock was revealed, but not knowing Shanks is a celestial dragon, it makes me think him stealing the Nika devil fruit wasn't a coincidence at all. Someone has been listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. He knew what that devil fruit really was. My thing, what was his plans for it? Who informed him that it would be there? Was he going to give it to someone, or did he want to become Nika? I always thought it was by chance, but now that obviously wasn't the case. The fact he went back to marry Joa but left and his family didn't do anything to him seems fishy to me, especially when he most likely went home after traveling with Roger. I hate to say it, but I can easily see Shanks becoming an enemy. How did that magic circle get inside that castle? I mean, Shanks legit was just an Elbath. How the hell did Shamrock even know about Loki? When Garling joined the Elders, you can tell there is animosity between him and the Elders. Something is at play here for sure. So let's take that piece by piece. Magic circle inside the castle, definitely Harold. I mean, I shouldn't say definitely, but all signs point to that.
If it was there,
and then
before.
The whole thing, yes, and of course Shamrock knows about Loki because I mean Loki's famous, and people know about Loki all over the New World. Of course, the world government knows about them.
He has a special bounty.
Yes, and the whole thing about Garling, the animosity between Garling and the Elders. I think that that's tying into the thing you brought up of like him making a move, and I like it because I think that having that kind of wild card in that group is going to actually make them more menacing because it's not just the stodgy, like, boring villains we're used to. It's like, oh, they have an element here that's going to up the ante. So, yeah.
Oh, 100%.
There's plenty more to that comment too about the Shanks and Mary Joa and the Nika fruit.
Yeah, so I
still like the idea that it was by chance. I think there's that feels better to me.
Yeah, this is one of those things where we start tiptoeing towards that chosen one thing that makes me sweat all the time when we start talking about the truth of this devil fruit. And the Shanks timeline that's starting to form has got me thinking about a lot of things. And the thing that's got me thinking about lately, just a couple of days ago, and I had to accost my poor spouse with this because we were not recording yet. Oda had Shanks lose his arm all those years ago in Romance Dawn to give that first chapter a big, emotional punch. That was an editor note, in fact. So this is not something that was planned 25 plus years ago. But there is a part of me that would love the idea of Shanks being branded with this kind of mark, whether by choice or not, doesn't really matter to me, and giving that away as a part of his gamble on the future, on this new generation. Because to me, tying this mark of the abyss and all of this stuff to that sacrifice, I think that closes the gap on the chosen one thing. That for whatever reason he picked up that fruit, he did not take it to Fuchsia Village to give it to Luffy. That was a fluke. I'm still firmly in the belief that was a fluke. Maybe the fruit itself sensed a kinship with Luffy and I don't know, called to him or drew him in, something like that. But the idea that Shanks sought Luffy out still is not something that I'm a fan of. I don't even like the idea that he went to find Ace because Ace was by design hidden from everyone. Like, that should not be information that he has, because the government would have killed him. That's just, the government would have sent somebody over there and taken care of Ace. So Ace needs to not exist at this point. So I think that part, no matter what, is a fluke. But I do like the idea that Shanks has gotten both sides of this story in a way that isn't changed or modified by the information from Laugh-Tale, because he doesn't have it. And he chooses to go insert himself into this narrative differently, and ends up finding someone who might, be able to pull down this structure. And he does, cut ties with his family by giving up the arm that has this mark. I don't know. I think that fits a little bit better, and kind of ties it all back around, because now Shanks is basically god tier power level. So people are always like, well, why did he let his arm get bit off? And because narrative, that's why. But, tying that back around
I would
for a
love
reason
that
that
retcon.
reforms him. Yeah, right? Isn't that
I would
great?
love that. Yeah, he's like, he lets himself lose his arm as a way of him deciding that he's never going back. Yeah, I mean, that would be chef's kiss. So yeah, but okay. I'm going to lose an arm if we don't end this show soon. So there you go. Thanks so much for listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. We'll be back soon for One Piece 1141. That's right, we don't have a break this week, so that chapter is going to be hitting live pretty soon. And so we're looking forward to talking about it already. I sure am. But for now, thanks as always for listening to Rookie Pirate Radio. Have a great one, and we'll sail with you next time.